I'm making a game. This isn't really so much an announcement as it is an opportunity for me to talk about the ideas that I'm putting into this game and how it is that I'm going about trying to achieve my goals. The game, the working title is Legends and Lore. It is a working title. I'm kind of, it's growing on me, to be honest, and I'm actually starting to come up with aspects of the game that can tie into that as a title. Originally, it was literally just there to be the alliterative parody of Dungeons and Dragons. So instead of D&D, it's L&L. L&L is not very good to say. So, like, if I can find a different one, I'm looking for that. But it's what it is supposed to answer the question of what if Dungeons and Dragons were a Powered by the Apocalypse system. Powered by the Apocalypse as a umbrella category of games, like as a family of games, has been a little bit hit and miss. I like most of what I see. Definitely, like, reading the books, I get inspired. I really like a lot of the mechanics that they bring to an RPG. In practice, it has not always turned out so well. The one that I have the most experience with is Monster of the Week, which is fine for what it is. I think Monster of the Week suffers from being a relatively early addition to the Powered by the Apocalypse family. And as such, it doesn't benefit from a lot of the developments that have happened since then, because time. A more recent one that I've played is actually Root, which we had some... I ran a campaign of this, and we had some difficulties with regards, like, the campaign having a direction. That was fully on us. We were really just trying out the game because I found it charming. The issue with Root is I think it's underdeveloped. It needed some more time to really grapple with the ideas that it was trying to deal with, and it was trying to work into the game, and to actually incorporate those into a rule set that is connected with itself and really works. It's you're going through a woodland and there aren't any actions for, like, tracking, for example, that kind of stuff. Just like little things that I would expect to be there and aren't. There's fully no support for certain types of activities that feel like they should be relatively commonplace for this kind of setting. So, Powered by the Apocalypse has not always been a home run, but I do tend to enjoy them. As a system, I find them easy to use, really intuitive, and quite, what's the word? They promote the kind of gameplay that I want from a narrative rules light RPG. I've read through significant portions of the Avatar RPG as well, which is Powered by the Apocalypse. I've not run that one, though, so I don't have any firsthand experience with it. So what I'm doing is trying to do a Powered by the Apocalypse system, but with the trappings of D&D. Basically, what I'm envisioning is, I can sit down and say, hey, who wants to play some D&D? And, have, like, the character sheets and the dice and everything, and have it look like D&D in the sort of almost superficial ways that D&D does. Because there's certain aspects of the property that we think of as being part of D&D's identity. The D20, for example. I'm maintaining the D20 as part of my system instead of going with the usual 2D6. Because the D20 is so iconic to D&D, you can't have D&D without it. So Legends and Lore has a D20. The 6 ability scores, Strength, Dex, Con, Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma. I am maintaining those. Those continue to exist. because those are another thing that has remained unchanged since the earliest days of D&D. And I would argue that it would be one of the most dramatic departures from D&D tradition if those were to change in some future edition. I don't think they ever will. So I've maintained those. And little quick note, it's not great. I noticed right away that these 6 ability scores are just not great for dealing with, for designing around. There's some significant design problems that I had to figure out a way to deal with as I was developing this. So it's got those. It has classes. You can call them playbooks if you like, but I'm going to call them classes because a class is part of D&D. A playbook is not. So these are classes. And for the time being, I'm doing all of the classes that appear in the 5th edition Player's Handbook, plus the Warlord, because I love the Warlord. And the reason why I decided to go with those classes and not the Player's Handbook from any other edition is honestly because what I'm trying to do here is create an alternative. I'm trying to create a game that has all the trappings of D&D, but is not D&D, and it doesn't fall into the same design pitfalls. A way to show people, particularly new players who have only ever played D&D, or to show people what an RPG can be if they get out of the corral of D&D. You know, there's like this fence that if you have only ever been inside, you feel like, well, anything outside is going to be the same as what's inside. We'll just stay here because we're familiar with it. This comfort, this rut of being in a game and you have tried nothing else, and so you don't know what it is that you are missing. This is what I am trying to help break through. So, Legends and Lore has the 6 ability scores. Each one has, I want to say it's 2 basic moves associated with it. And every class has not only combat abilities, but it also has at least one gather information ability that helps you ask questions about your environment. It has at least one ability specific for exploration. You know, the so-called pillars of D&D, many of which get ignored. Exploration is incredibly weak in 5e. Even weaker than it is in 4th. And in 4th, it's technically there. It's technically there. 4e has exploration mechanics. In as far as you can use, it has like well-defined DCs for skill uses. And it has the skill challenge mechanic if it becomes appropriate to use that. But even then, that's pretty weak. And then 5e is even weaker because it has basically no mechanics for running like an extensive exploration series. So what I am trying to do is identify and correct a lot of what I see as the problems with D&D in terms of what it advertises and the way that people conceptualize the kinds of stories that can be told in it and the way that it actually runs. Now, obviously, it's an extremely different kind of game. I'm not incorporating, tactical grid-based combat, which you could argue is also an iconic part of D&D, and I would generally agree. The issue is that D&D does not historically acknowledge that. 4e is the only one that did, and people have frankly hated it for it. Even though grid-based combat has been like a staple of D&D and extremely commonplace for basically the entire run of the property. So we're not having any of that. We are doing the narrative theater of the mind, exclusively theater of the mind type combat. The notion that I had to tie it into the name Legends and Lore is actually that you play as a group of adventurers who are telling the story about their past exploits. So you're telling it the legends and the lore about your adventures in the past. And so I'm sort of contemplating the meta mechanics that can help reflect this. Story points, that kind of thing. If somebody dies, but they've been telling a story this whole time, well, how do you resolve that? You can use story points to, escape alive. That kind of thing. I'm still working it out. I'll probably be able to start playtesting by the end of this year. And I'm hoping that I can develop this game within, I'm thinking like the next 6 months to a year-ish, and then put it up on DriveThruRPG and just like release it out into the world, because I think the gaming community deserves an alternative like this. A way to say, hey, I want to play D&D, but I don't want to get bogged down by, books and tomes and these giant books of rules. And I don't want to have to deal with, the Marshall caster disparity. I don't want to be useless, but I don't want to be overpowered. In a Powered by the Apocalypse system, like, that's not even really a concern, because the focus isn't on, all right, here's an obstacle, bypass this obstacle, get through this obstacle in the most efficient way possible. The way that the game is designed, yeah, you're going to be getting through obstacles, but the important part is how, not how efficiently. There's going to be a lot of room for exploring relationships between characters, and for customizing your loot. I'm actually ripping off the equipment section from the Root RPG almost completely, because that is a really cool system. If you haven't checked it out and you're interested in like mechanics for generating equipment, weapons, armor, etc., check out Root, because it's one of the best equipment systems I think I've ever seen. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. And maybe I'll have some more news for that in the future. This isn't really an opinion piece, so I guess we're going to call this, it's not, I don't want to call it an announcement, because like, I don't really have anything of substance to announce. I do have some content. I don't have it with me, so I can't like show you excerpts from the game. But yeah, Legends and Lore is coming, and it's going to be published eventually.